So much of this healing journey can feel arduous. It can feel exhausting, challenging, so difficult at times. There are practices, however, on this journey that can actually feel really good, motivating, and inspiring, but it can be hard to connect to them sometimes. So if any of that feels relevant to you, then today's video is for you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. And if you've been here a while, thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. So the practice that I'm talking about here is giving yourself space, being really intentional about sitting with, reflecting, acknowledging, and celebrating the progress that you've made along the way. And this can be challenging because so often we tend to look at the healing process as you've either failed at it or you've succeeded at it. You don't give yourself the credit for the work that happens, that has to happen in the middle there, right? Even before you officially start your healing journey, there are things that you've done that are points of progress, including deciding to take the journey. That's a huge thing because so many people, unfortunately, never do. But we tend to look at progress as only being something that is progress if we feel like we've mastered it, where it's no longer an issue. And in my last video, where I talked about something in my own personal experience recently, we know that that just isn't the reality. And being able to take intentional time to look at those points of progress along the way is a really important practice to keep you, it's like fueling you to continue to move up that mountain. And progress can be, and often is really, in little moments. It's not always about really big things. It's often not at all about big things. It's the little moments when you are able to talk yourself through something. It's noticing that you're thinking about something different or you're relating to something in a different way. It's, like I said, making a decision about something. And one of the things that comes up a lot in that regard is people will often say something along the lines of, well, I didn't have a choice. It was now or never, or things got so bad, I had to do something. Well, in reality, things have probably been bad a lot of times in your life, but you didn't make the choice at that time to heal. And it doesn't mean that you were weak at that time or anything like that. It just means that at that time you weren't ready. But in reality, there is always a choice. But when you tell yourself or somebody else, well, I didn't have a choice. You did, but you say that you didn't because you're then minimizing. It's a way that you minimize the progress. You minimize the fact that you've got something that you can feel good about because you've told yourself so often that there's nothing about you to celebrate. But I can promise you, if you're watching this video, you've done some healing. Even if that healing seems to be only learning about stuff. Learning is an important part of this process. A willingness to learn is an important part of this process, right? Because part of our way of coping is denying. It's avoiding anything related to it. So when you start learning and engaging and opening to that, that's something to feel good about because you can never get up that mountain or even begin the climb of that mountain without first doing that, right? So when you acknowledge those points of progress, like I said, it fuels you, but it also gives you something very concrete that you can hold on to, that you can remind yourself of about your capability in continuing to move forward. So this video actually came about because the group that I'm leading right now, one of the posts that I shared, a practice that I shared, is this. It is being able to really reflect on those moments, to honor them, for us as a group to be able to celebrate them, the people in the group, in the progress that they've made. And we need to be able to do that for ourselves. And it's hard because we minimize it so easily. Well, it's not really progress because the next day I wasn't able to do it. Or it wasn't really progress because I'm still struggling so much in all these other ways. That's not at all the reality. And I think it's so important to be able to really try to take that in. We live in a society that is very all or nothing, right? You're either Superwoman or Superman, or you're weak. No. Life happens in the middle. People exist in the middle. Healthy, happy relationships exist in the middle. Because this really doesn't exist, and there may be moments that it does, but it's in moments, right? This is where we live. And really nobody lives here indefinitely either. This middle, this messy middle, is where we live. And it's progress, it's struggle. It's progress, it's struggle. It's difficulty, it is beautiful things happening. It's all of that. And being able to learn to hold the truth of that itself is significant progress. So I would really like to encourage you to see if you can take some time, and maybe you just sit and reflect on it. This is actually something really beautiful to do in a journal, where you sit down and you just kind of let yourself reflect on a time. Maybe it's something from a long time ago. Maybe you just look at the last week. And this is important too, because we can look at time in a way that isn't really beneficial to this process. But if you can look at maybe the last month and think about something that was a little bit different for you. Maybe you thought about something differently. Maybe you pushed yourself a little bit and were able to create connection, or challenged yourself in a way to do something that was good for you. Maybe you practice a healthy coping skill, where normally you wouldn't really be able to do that. It wouldn't come naturally, but you were able to be intentional and were able to practice a healthy coping skill. And this is important. It doesn't mean that you practice that healthy coping skill and from that point on, you only practiced healthy coping skills. It doesn't mean that at all. It means at that particular time, in that moment, you practiced a healthier way of coping. If you practiced an unhealthy way of coping 20 minutes later, or 2 days later, or 2 weeks later, that doesn't matter. That moment in time is still progress, right? Because there was a previous time that one moment wouldn't have happened, right? And if you think about that over the course of many years, there's probably many times when you coped in a healthier way, even if the majority of your coping may not be so healthy. There are times that you did. There are times that you challenged yourself to push a little bit further in terms of doing things that are good for you. Maybe that is you pushed yourself to be vulnerable with somebody in a healthy way, and it turned out well. So I'm not talking about pushing yourself beyond limits that are maybe not healthy, or that leave you feeling so exhausted or distraught afterward that you're not able to kind of take in the benefit of it. I'm talking about healthy challenges, like maybe going to therapy when you really didn't feel like it, or reaching out to somebody when what you really wanted to do was isolate, right? Going back to a video a while ago where I talked about the importance of not isolating when you are feeling really vulnerable or a lot of shame. There are so many ways that you are progressing. Every day, there is likely something, if not many things, that can be a point of progress. Maybe even how you're waking up in the morning. Instead of berating yourself about everything you didn't get done yesterday, maybe you take a moment and just breathe before you jump out of bed. Or maybe you start your day thinking about the things that you did get done the day before. Maybe you drink enough water, because self-care is an important part of healing, right? So it can be really simple, everyday things that eventually become part of your natural way of being in the world. Because there was a point that it wasn't your natural way of being in the world. And recognizing the change in that is being able to recognize progress. When it eventually becomes your natural way of being in the world, it's still progress. You just you don't really have to work at it anymore. So in your journal, it can be helpful sometimes to think about, okay, in the last week or the last month or the last year. So maybe define a specific period of time. Maybe you look at it as thinking about how you struggled as a kid and thinking about where you are now. One of the things that came up in the group that I kind of talked about is thinking about your child self and how, if that child would have been able to see the life that you've created for her or him. So if that child could have looked into the future and known that this is where their life would be, even in its struggle, even if it's in its imperfection, no matter what that looks like, pretty confidently I can say, if you are a childhood trauma survivor, that there are certainly aspects of your current life that child would have given anything to be able to believe that they could experience that at some point in their life, right? Because as a child, it's so hard to really let yourself hope that things can be different. And the idea of being able to trust or believe how they could be different is really it's not accessible as a child because we haven't yet experienced it. So if that child could somehow look into the future and see you now and know that this is their life, even with everything that's so imperfect in it, that child would likely still desire to be there, would look forward to the day of being there, maybe even be awed by the change, even in its imperfection. I wanted to be really clear. I'm not talking about some imaginary life that is just all rainbows and unicorns. That's not at all what I'm talking about. But when you really think about how different things might be, the freedom that you have for choices, even if you're not fully free, the things that have changed for you, the things that you've been able to bring into your life, whether that's people or experiences, opportunities. Again, it doesn't mean that your life is perfect, but there are probably many things that are better in your life now than you experienced as a child. in part because of maybe the environment that you lived in, the lack of power that you had, so much of the unknown ahead of you, so much of the hopelessness about the limits that you believed were put on you. So as you think about that and what is different, what would have been almost impossible for your child self to be able to believe could be possible, all of that is progress. So it's possible that this could bring up some stuff for you. And hopefully, if you've been following my channel, you know that I encourage people to have support, ideally professional support. And if not professional support, somebody in your life that is supportive of you and knows that you're on this journey and is supportive of that journey. And even if it does bring up some stuff that maybe you haven't thought about in a while or may feel a little challenging, try to let yourself connect to a sense of accomplishment, a sense of awe, a sense of pride, maybe even like that sense of surprise when you realize what is different for you, how different it is for you. And I do want to be clear again, because I know that it can be really challenging to get caught up in those thoughts that come up. Yeah, but, right? I want it to be really clear. I want you to hold on to this. It is not about having a great life, however you might define that. It's just about having a life that you choose to live, that you are immersed in at making or creating opportunities for you to feel better, for you to heal. That is something to be proud of. It truly is. And if you're watching this video, you are doing that. So I would love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. What came up for you? If you end up journaling, I would love for you, you don't have to share anything too personal, but maybe just share what that experience was like for you. Anything surprise you about it? So all of that and more in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up so other people can find it too. Do you like me sharing some specific practices with you? Let me know in the comments. I'm also considering doing some more like meditation types of things, maybe even doing some distance Reiki. Let me know your thoughts about that too in the comments. So thanks so much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.